Russia reports fighting on its territory for the first time.
Here's a summary of the article.
Nearly 24 hours after the incursion of fighters from Ukraine into Russian territory, on Thursday, March 2, there was no footage of the ensuing fighting or its aftermath. According to the accounts of several witnesses quoted by Russian websites, armed clashes took place in two villages of the Bryansk region, Suchony and Lyabekon, located a few hundred meters from the Ukrainian border. This fighting is the first reported on Russian territory since the beginning of the invasion of Ukraine last year and even since the beginning of the war in 2014. According to the official Russian toll, 2 civilians were killed and an 11-year-old child was wounded, by a bullet fired by a NATO weapon, as they were traveling by car. This toll reinforces the shock caused in Russia by the incursion, described by Russian President Vladimir Putin as terrorist, but does not reflect the large-scale attack that official Russian channels reported throughout the day. The men claim to be part of the Russian Volunteer Corps, a reputedly far-right Kyiv fighting unit that was once part of the Ukrainian Azov Battalion. The time has come for Russian citizens to realize that they are not slaves and to rise up, said one of the men identified by the Russian exile media agency STVO as the leader of the volunteer body. Denis Nikitin, known to belong to the Russian neo-Nazi movement, is indeed fighting on the Ukrainian side.
This post received a score of 11,000, with an upvote ratio of 95%. Here are the top comments in response to this article.
Russia reports. Inevitably followed by false information.
They're also claiming that it's Russians loyal to Ukraine, not Ukrainians.
Based on all the shit and lies Russia has made, off the top of my head this could be any of the following. Ukrainians who were given Russian passports who have turned against Russia. Ukrainians who accepted being kidnapped by Russia for a chance to turn against Russia from inside. Russians rebelling against Putin that Russia is trying to downplay. Wagner forces turning against Russia after Russia started bad-mouthing them.
They are Russians, supposedly volunteering for Ukraine. Russia claimed that these are the same people who offed Alexander Dugin's daughter, which I doubt. Not to mention that many Russian neo-Nazis and ultranationalists love Dugin. You know, shit which Russia has accused Ukraine of from the get-go, while Ukraine is actually doing shit like drone striking airfields.
False flags are Russia's favorite tactic. It's fair to assume that any suspect event is a false flag by default.
A false flag is what put Putin in power. Why should he change what works?
A boy wandering in an open prairie happened upon an unaware leprechaun and grabbed him, demanding some of his gold. The leprechaun, being clever but in a tight spot, agreed to lead the boy to it. He pointed to a flower and said that's where his gold is buried, and the boy let him go. He took off his scarf and put it around the flower and returned home to get a shovel and returned to the prairie, and to his horror every flower had a scarf around it and the leprechaun was nowhere to be seen. I'm sure I butchered the story, but maybe you'll get why I mention it.
I'm sorry, I don't follow at all.
I'll attempt to explain. One scenario is like the boy who cried wolf. Keep making bogus claims and people stop listening. But you can also use those bogus claims as a way to hide something you don't want to endure further scrutiny. Kind of the same tactic lawyers used to use by burying their opposition in paperwork. Stacks of pages, and the key evidence is one sentence on one of those pages.
Greater than. According to the official Russian toll, 2 civilians were killed and an 11-year-old child was wounded by a bullet fired by a NATO weapon, as they were traveling by car. My emphasis. The fact that Russia specifically stated the gun was a NATO weapon seems to me like a ploy to pin this on NATO as a justification that Russia is fighting NATO. Edit. Fixed quote levels. Added my emphasis.
This video was automatically created by Reddit to speech. The article and comments in this video were selected from Reddit according to their upvotes, and any paraphrasing was performed by smmry.com, without any human intervention.